I'm Jason.
I'm Scott.
Welcome to Liquid Carnage. We've got a great show for you today.
I think we do. I think this is going to be one of my favorite ones because this is a topic that affects all of us in the adult world. Because when you start adulting, you find out life is not as easy as you thought it was going to be.
I will say this. When I started my work career, before I get in my work career, I think it's important. Let's acknowledge special guests.
Our special guest here today.
I think we need to acknowledge our special
We
guest
have
before we even get started.
Great special guest today. He's a
We
friend
have
of the
asked.
show, friend of the show.
He's been a longtime friend, first-time listener. His insight, I think, is going to be important because what we're talking about is changing career paths. We start off with one idea of what our career path is going to be, and then we move on to something totally different, outside of our comfort zone, maybe in a totally different realm. So, without further ado,
Now, do we say his full name or just his proper name?
I'd like to say just his full name, not his proper, not all
Not his
that-
proper?
Yeah,
We have
because
Papa Dave motherfucking Watson right here.
okay, but I thought we were going to do the proper name.
That is his proper name.
No, Dave Watson is his proper name. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
I guess we have to debate about what your proper name is, Dave. But in my phone, it's Papa Dave motherfucking Watson. So, call it what you may, it's still Dave Watson. I just added some colorful, language to it.
Expletives?
Expletives, if
Well,
you will.
thanks, Scott. I wouldn't expect any less.
I wouldn't expect any more either, for that fact.
All of us have faced this, though, where we get to a point in our life where we've gone on a certain career path, and it's just not it's not what we're envisioning, aspiring. Most people do not work 38, 40 years in the same career field anymore.
No,
it just doesn't happen.
I don't think it
just doesn't
happens
happen.
anymore. And especially in this day and age, very few people, there's no pensions anymore with major companies, so people don't have any incentive to stay. And the millennial thought process is now is they go to the highest bidder. They will work for whoever's going to pay them the most for that point in time.
But in regards to that, though, the reason why we brought up this topic was because we're talking about a career change.
Total career change.
Maybe education got you to a certain point. Maybe I just took the first job out of high school and the first job was this. And now I'm going to a totally different career path. So we're not just talking about switching jobs because a lot of millennials, they'll switch jobs, but they're staying in the same career path. They're just going to the highest bidder, up. We're talking today, this episode is talking about career paths that are different than where we started from.
And, I want to preface this with, when you go to college after high school, you graduate high school, the idea is you go to a trade school, you go to college, you join the military, you get a job. And ideally, is if you're going to school or getting a secondary education, that's what your career is going to be. It is very unfair. It is completely unfair to ask an 18-year-old what they want to do the rest of their life and have them actually do it.
Yet 40 or 50 years ago, you went out of high school, you got a job as a mechanic or you got a job as something, and you did that for the rest of your life. I know my parents, for the most part, that was where their life was.
My mom became a nurse at 20 years old and retired a nurse at 60 years old.
And that's what she did.
That's what she did. My dad joined the highway patrol here in Arizona at 22 years old and retired at 53, 54 years old. I mean, he had time in. They never changed careers. This is what we're going to do. This is what we went to school for.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with just the mindset in which they were raised.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that, that whole baby boomer generation was raised to be that way. It was just that's just what you did.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Like your mom, like you said, she started being a nurse when she was 20 and retired 40 years later. So she knew that she was going to be a nurse, and once she became a nurse, she stayed a nurse. That's just because that's who you were.
And I'll be honest, speaking from a completely different generation, I've been called Generation Y. I've been called the Millennials. I'm not a millennial. I'm Generation Y by a year. So I'm at the very end of the Gen Ys. I could not imagine staying in the same job for 40 years.
They said this is the first time in history where they've actually had 4 generations in the workforce at the same time.
I know, that's crazy, right?
Right?
And
4 generations at the same time. And if you research,
that's kind of sad, really.
The 4 generations,
absolutely.
And all of them look at life a little differently. The beginning generation, or our parents, you get a job, you stay loyal to that job, you keep it for as long as you can because that's stability.
Stability, right. And
Right?
certainty.
Right.
Yeah.
Then our generation is, okay, I don't necessarily need the stability, but I need to feel like I'm working at something that is going to make me better, make me stronger, make me a better person. Then you've got the generation right below us, the 30-year-olds.
That's me.
Okay, so their focus is I want to make the most money. So I'm going to move to whatever job makes me the most money.
And I don't necessarily agree with that with my generation. With the millennials, I'll agree with that. They will go to the highest bidder.
No.
They're mercenaries.
Okay, but here's the.
I don't
Mercenaries.
necessarily agree.
I don't agree with you either because the millennials, they want their job to mean something in the global spectrum of life.
You know what, I'll be
that
honest with you.
I am something bigger than the job I'm at.
There are more interns now. There are more people in the millennial generation that are willing to work for free just so that they can feel like to know that they're being appreciated. If they're going to be in a position, a work position, they definitely want to know that what they're doing is making a difference. And are very appreciated.
And I don't disagree with that, but I know that they're also going to work for the highest bidder. They're doing that internship to get their foot in the door.
Well, sure, because
And they want to feel valued. And when I look at the 30-year-olds, myself included, we're at that point in life where we're trying to be established. You're trying to have the house, the wife, the 2.3 kids, whatever the American average is. In your 30s, that's what you're supposed to have, quote unquote. So I think people are striving for that in their jobs. I was raised by baby boomers. I have this weird loyalty to my job. Whether it's good or bad, that's remains to be seen. But my employer, I remain loyal to because, like you said, it's stability. I've got that mentality, and I don't know a lot of people my age that are going to the highest bidder. I just haven't seen it.
Well, I'm not saying that it really is that way. What I'm trying to say is that the millennial, and the millennial generation really want to know that they're trying to make a difference because there's a lot of shit that's going on in the world today that needs to be changed, and we all know it. So they're going to be the ones to do that. They're the next generation that's and very educated as well. There's a lot of very smart, very educated people that are coming up in that generation, and not to be undermined either. Because it's kind of sad in a way to some people and incredible to others. To look at the children these days that are. Well, how many people do you know that have kids that are like 2 years old and can already work a cell phone or an iPad or something along those lines? I mean, when I was 2, I was learning to shit on the toilet still, and how to put square blocks and square holes, not be able to.
At that same point, that's apples and oranges because it's what technology was available to you then versus what's available to these kids now.
But that's where I'm just saying that the intelligence levels these days are it's a lot higher, I feel, than it was.
But so are the attention spans. They're a lot shorter. For as high as those IQ levels are getting, the attention spans are getting so much shorter. And we're seeing that with these fidget spinners. I didn't know what a fidget spinner was till about 2 weeks ago. And when I saw what it was, if I could have rolled my eyes any harder, I'd have given myself a concussion.
Well,
is that what we're down to today for keeping kids' attention spans and monitoring ADHD?
but from my perspective, I mean, we are all in that we're about 10 years apart. I mean, I'm the oldest, you're the youngest, probably Scott. You're somewhere in the middle, Dave. But it's damn tough to say where you were at 18 is going to be different than where you are at 28 to where you are at 40.
Oh, absolutely.
And one of the reasons why we brought Dave on is because Dave made a major career change.
Oh, yeah.
Major career change from where he was 4 years ago to 2 years ago to now where he is
And
now.
not just a major, it's like it was a whole life shift.
Yeah.
It was a complete life shift from what you've known, what you've been used to a whole new world.
So not to put you on the spot, Dave, but tell us a little bit about where you were 2 years ago in terms of career path.
Make
And
it 2.5 years ago to get you back to where you were before where you were now.
Well, really, to be honest with you, I think I've actually had several life-changing career changes throughout time. But the one you're probably asking about,
More referring to,
the more recent one is the decision to start selling real estate from what I was doing. I'm assuming that's what you want to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what. So I would have to say that the one previous to that actually is probably a little more scary, I guess you could say, before than even this one.
Okay.
Because before I went into real estate, I was still in sales, you know, and so I've got a background of sales already. So as far as commission based pay and all that kind of stuff, I was
You're
relatively
used
used
to
to
it.
that. You know,
Okay.
it wasn't. I had to kind of get over that I'd already gotten over the fear of having to, you know, live off of commissions. But before that, I was working for a company at the airport and making relatively good money doing that, and I was there for almost 14 years.
Oh, I didn't know
And,
that.
no idea.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
guess we've never
Well,
got
we
the
met
time
you
to
though,
know
but
the
we
old
met
Dave
you
Watson.
before that part of your life. I
What was
think.
that?
I think we met you before that part of your life. I mean,
I don't think so.
Not before I left there. No, I left there, and I think. if
Oh, I had
remember
no
correctly,
idea.
It was
I'm
like
sorry.
2007, but
I don't mean to interrupt you. Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, it's all right. But I went from a very established job that I was at, and my paychecks I never had a problem getting my paychecks, you know, and I was very experienced at what I did and very comfortable. But you know, the things that were happening in the company and whatnot, you know, I wasn't very comfortable with, and it was, I got to a point there to where it was starting to affect my health with stress and different things like that. And you know, my wife and I had just kind of gotten together. We hadn't been married for very long, and it was affecting our relationship already, and so it was very important that I made a change. And so that's when I got into sales. I went from a decent paying, steady job that I knew was going to be there tomorrow, to the uncertainty of whether or not I was going to have a paycheck, you know. And
What goes through your mind when you make that transition? Because when you go from certainty to uncertainty, and especially in that case where it's your well-being, you're married, you got
Kids.
You've
Your
got
kids were
5
still
kids between you and
not
your
out of
wife.
high school. They were still,
no,
you know.
our kids were still pretty young. Actually,
Yeah, exactly.
What goes through my mind? Yeah, definitely uncertainty, but it was a change that I had to make. It was something that I had to force myself to do, because I left, you know, even though I didn't like it and was very uncomfortable there, I was still comfortable there, you know, because I knew it, you know, I knew
You know
I
what
could
you
go-
had to do.
I knew what I had to do, and then I would go home. I'd go to work and I'd come home, you know. It's scary. It's definitely scary, you know, but I think at that particular time, I went into car sales, and that's when I got into selling cars. And
Now, did you choose that because you knew you have a gregarious personality and you knew that you could sell someone on that, or what brought you to that?
well, I think it had something to do with that. You know, I've always been a very outgoing, kind of outspoken person, and you know, I don't think I've ever met a stranger.
No.
you
That
know,
became a stranger very
and-
long after
yeah,
you met them.
exactly.
Yeah.
None of us
So-
in the show have.
Well, and you know, so I had a friend that was in the business, and he worked for a local car lot here in town. And can I say the name?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I started my career in car sales at 66 Auto Sales.
Yes.
And a great group of people, great place to go and shop for cars, by the way. Tell them Dave Watson sent you. For sure.
That's a promo for
but-
60 Auto Sales.
Yeah, promo for them, and also a referral for Dave. So
Yeah.
always be thinking of the next deal, right? So anyways,
closing.
you know, I had a friend in the business, and I talked to him before I made the decision to move, and he's like, dude, you should totally come do this, man. You'd be awesome at it. And you know, as I've always been, you know, pretty much a front man in the bands and different things that I've done, and I'm used to being in front of people, and he just, you know, he knew me from that as well. So he's like, you should totally try this, man. I think you'd kill it. So I just took a leap of faith, and you know, luckily my wife is super supportive and has always just pretty much supported me in anything I've wanted to do, because she knows my personality. You know, she knows I'm not going to just settle, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I have a lot of faith in myself, in my own abilities, but it is definitely a scary thing to do. It's not something that's, you know, somebody should just take lightly and say, oh, well, since Dave did it, you know, I can do it. You know, you definitely you weigh your options. You know, you want to make sure that you're ready for it.
Scott, have you ever taken a leap like that?
Yeah. Actually, I have. You know, I've had 2 careers here in my short, I guess, professional life. I've been in the professional world since I was 22 years old. I spent the first 6 years working for a bank during the boom of the real estate. I worked my way up from being an administrative bookkeeper to a teller to a loan officer trainee to a commercial loan officer, and I did that all through the boom here in Kingman, and we made a lot of deals, and then we got bought out by a bigger bank, a regional bank, and I lasted about 2 years there in their system. I got laid off, and then I had to transition, and it wasn't because I wanted to; it's because I had to. But at that same point, I knew I had to make that change regardless before I got laid off, because I did feel very firmly that I'd be dead by the time I was 35 by the amount of stress that job was causing me. Because when I got laid off, the economy was tanking, and that bank was being so conservative with all the deals that anything that went wrong with any deal that we had prior to them acquiring us, we would have to do monthly reports on. We'd have to follow them, and if they missed a payment by a day, they were pushing us to foreclose on.
Wow.
So it was causing more stress. So thankfully, I got laid off, and I got to transition to my job now. And I say that lightly now, 8 years later, because it's been 8 years, almost to the day as we're recording this, that I got laid off, and it's a huge life-changing thing because I finally got a chance to go do what I wanted to go do. I went to school at Arizona State. I have a degree in communication. I've always, just like Dave, I've always been a front man. Talking to people is not hard for me. And eventually I know that my life probably falls in sales. It's an easy thing for me to do. I work in public relations and marketing, and I essentially do sales without the commission work, without any sales goals. But that's going to happen. That's going to come. It's the nature of the beast, especially in healthcare in today's
You're
world.
going to work for me someday, Scott.
Yeah, I will be Dave's.
You're going to be my top producer.
I'm going to fetch Dave's coffee every morning.
You're going to produce coffee every morning.
Yes, Mr. Watson. You should order from Starbucks, Mr. Watson. But yeah, I have changed career paths, and actually, it's funny. I was going to be a highway patrolman. I was going to follow my
You're
dad's
gonna
footsteps.
really?
I had the application in.
No
to DPS.
way.
Yeah, I did at the
Oh,
time.
come on. Are you serious?
Seriously, I was fresh out of college.
I'm learning something new like you
was-
people.
I was living at home, and I had to do something. So I was working as a substitute teacher for a local school here,
What were
and
you teaching?
I taught kindergarten through 10th grade.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Whoa, okay.
All right, so
I have to take a pause for a second because
Yeah.
this podcast
Just
at Liquid
took a
Carnage,
turn.
tweet us. I've never ever heard of this story before, so
neither, me
this
neither.
is something new.
How long did you do that?
I did it for about 6 months. I got offered a job teaching high school history and English.
So you were like Jack Black in
School of Rock.
Very
Yeah.
much without the musical talent. Yeah,
Oh,
very
okay.
much. But they actually offered me a job teaching full time the following year if I wanted it. But I started to apply for the Highway Patrol because my dad was in the Highway Patrol. Again, it goes back to the steady career path of being a baby boomer. I knew I could get my 25 to 30 years and get out, and there's always going to be something new. And I could go anywhere in the state I wanted to go. Or that they would let me go. Amongst that application process, a man who was like a second father to me, I worked for as a teenager at a local ice cream store here. His family started a major hotel chain nationwide and started the local bank I worked for. Called me one day and said, "Hey, I know this is what you're looking at, but if you want, we'll give you a shot as a loan officer trainee to see if this works. We'll pay you $10 an hour to start," which wasn't much of that back then, but still it was, decent.
More than minimum wage now.
Today it's minimum
More
wage.
than minimum wage, or less than minimum wage now.
Yeah, and back then it was $3 or $4 higher than minimum wage. And he said, "I can't promise you anything, but if you work hard, the sky's the limit." So I took that job because I knew my days. I was working a straight day shift, weekends off, holidays off, and I wasn't going to get shot at theoretically. So
True. True.
And I took that and I ran, and I spent 6, almost 7 years doing that. And so. Yeah, there's always these life transitions that you have to go as far as career changes. I never planned on being a teacher. I never planned on being, a banker.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't plan on doing what I'm doing now, but this is where life has taken me. So you just kind of roll with the punches.
It's crazy how life just takes you
Yeah.
so many different paths that unexpected, and I think that's where the successful people really become successful is they don't let that hinder them, they just roll with the punches and make the best of it and make challenges. They look at them more like opportunities, and I think that's where the successful really
And I'll be the
reigns
first to
supreme.
say, I bitch and moan about change. I'm a creature of habit, and I do not want to do things differently once I find a way that they've worked.
Yeah.
But once I figure out a system and I know how whatever new project I'm working on and I can make it work, I will own that.
Well,
And I will do great at it.
I just want to accentuate this because Dave, not only did you switch into a sales job with real estate, you switched into a sales job with real estate that is not a guaranteed income. It is not a guaranteed salary.
Right.
Most realtors, if you look, and you probably know more better than me, so correct me if I'm wrong, but if you look at the range of realtors that we have in our little town, 20% of the realtors make 80% of the sales.
Oh,
that
absolutely,
80-20 rule that they say.
Absolutely, that's 100%.
So you're jumping in 2.5 years ago without having any.
It's actually almost 3.5 now.
3.5?
Yeah.
3.5 years ago with no guarantee of income, no guarantee of anything. I mean, you're taking a leap of faith. Talk me through the process of you and your wife when you had this discussion and said, you know what, I need to do something else, and this is what I see I could be successful in.
Well, there wasn't much of a discussion. I pretty much just told her what I was going to do.
So you just, like, you come home from work one day and like, hey, Tanya, this is what's going to happen?
That's exactly what happened. In fact, what kind of led me to that is I had a really, really bad day. I was selling service. I was working in the service department at a local dealership here in town, and it was just if you haven't done that job, the level of stress in that particular profession is extremely high.
In car sales?
Not necessarily just car sales, but in the service department when you're a service writer or service manager or something along those lines. I mean, just a ton of stress because you have to think about it. When your car breaks down, you're already pissed off before you walk through the door.
Yeah.
As a customer.
True.
And not necessarily at the dealership or the person, but they're the ones that take the brunt of it most of the time. And of course, you have to keep on your smiling face. Well, there was just a couple of instances that just kind of pushed me over the edge, and I knew at that point that I needed to do something different. And I was back right at the same kind of a situation that I was in when I left the steady job for car sales, and I knew real estate had always intrigued me and had always been something that I felt very passionate about, and I just knew that that's where I wanted to go. And so luckily I know quite a few people in the business and started asking questions. And once I made the decision, I came home from work that day and had told my wife, Tanya, I said, hey, this is what I want to do. And she said, well, whatever you need to do it. I'll support you.
And coincidentally, Tanya also made a career change a few months later, almost a year or two later after you did.
A year
or so.
A couple years, yeah. And then so she was 100% supportive of it because she just knows my work ethic, and she just knows that, I don't jump into stuff like this and just do it half-ass. You got to go head first, and that's just how I am.
So what's your thought process on like this decision? Like, I know you had it up to your ears with stress, but to say finally, like, what was the breaking point? Like, fuck it, I'm gonna do this. Just
well, to be honest with you, here's kind of the story. I was at my desk, and I don't know if you guys were ever in there when I worked there, but basically my desk was the very first desk that clients see when they come through the door, right?
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah.
And then there was a desk behind me, and there was a little old lady, and when I say that, I mean little old lady. She was probably 80s, and she was pretty cantankerous. And I was at my desk doing paperwork and finishing up some of the deals that I had going. She wasn't even my client. She wasn't my customer. She was the other service writer's customer, and he went back to check on her car or something. I don't even remember exactly the whole situation. And she came up to me at my desk and started basically cussing me out because obviously her frustration was that that her car was broken or whatever, and it was going to cost her money to fix. Well, she basically called me every name in the book and told me that I was a smart ass and all this other kind of stuff, and I hadn't even said anything to her. It wasn't my customer, and I literally wanted to I hate to say it, but I wanted to slap her. You know what I mean? I'm like, I can't do this. I'm over this. That right there was kind of the breaking point. I'm like, I realize I can't do that because that's not me. You know what I mean? I'm not a violent individual like these dogs are back there.
Hey, no animals were beat during the episode that you're listening
Maybe they
to.
should, Scott. Maybe it should be beat.
At the time of this recording, it's time for their nightly CrossFit exercises, so you can hear Hank sprinting through the house for his cardio.
But that's pretty much it. I just had had a rough go of it, and I just knew it was time. It was like because I'm a firm believer that if you're in a position where you can't put 100% into what you're doing, you should probably find something else.
Well, and I will say this though, because you didn't just take a regular job. You didn't take a desk job. You didn't take a 9-to-5 job. You took a real estate business that, frankly, is still
volatile.
Kingman is still kind of a shaky industry.
Time,
Yeah, I mean, you went into real estate,
Right.
and you know the old rumor is that the Trojans, or maybe it's the Greeks. Forgive me if I'm screwing this up, but basically they burned their boats and made the Trojan horse to commit themselves to succeeding.
Right.
There
Exactly.
wasn't an opportunity to. Well, I don't. But how about this? How many people though do we know that they don't take the risk to do what you did, Dave, because they know, well, I'm not willing to commit full force. You committed to something that frankly could have failed. You could have failed.
And does fail all the time.
All the time, right? We know realtors all the time that do not make it. It's a tough business. It's a tough racket. I'd like to know what inside of you said, you know what? I don't care if I have to scrape the shit off the floor. I'm going to make this work. What was it
with
about?
that intestinal fortitude?
Because, and I'm going to preface this, and forgive me, I don't want to put you on the spot. We are sitting and talking to one of the most successful realtors last year that we have in this fucking town.
I would say so. Absolutely.
I mean, one of the most successful realtors in this town. We're not talking about someone who,
the house we're sitting in, he sold me.
but we're not talking about someone who, well, I do 1 or 2 deals a year. We're talking about a in every month, day in, day out, produces realtor.
Well, Dave's, you're
From 3 years ago, couldn't even spell realtor, maybe. Didn't even know anything about realty.
It starts with an S, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, okay.
So
Dave
what?
Dave is a grinder. He wants. What'd you say? If you have 5 or 6 deals in escrow at a time,
It's not enough.
That's not enough. You want more, which is good. That's the mentality of one
But
of my realtors.
I will say this, Noreen and I have talked about you, Dave, and I've never said this before, so we're putting it on the podcast today. You are willing to do the things that 90% of this are not willing to do.
Well, see, here's the thing. You well, thank you, by the way.
I mean, and that's a compliment.
Well, no, of
that's a
course.
compliment
No,
that
and I
that's
take
why
it.
he's a success. It's
Oh, I
not
agree.
because he's a pretty guy and he sings real well. It's because he does the things that most people are not willing to do. And I know realtors that don't do what you do.
Well, Jason, I can tell you that you said it right there, as you know, towards the beginning of this is that you brought up the 80-20 rule. 80% of the business is done by the top 20% of the agents. Well, that's because they do what needs to be done and not what they want to do all the time. You in this business. So let me just kind of touch a little bit on something that Scott had asked earlier. What was it that made, or maybe you said it, what was it that inside me that made it okay for me to make that change? Well, in a business that your money isn't guaranteed. Well, to me, money is guaranteed because I go and get the money. I don't wait for the money to come to me. I'm not the person that's going to sit there and wait for business to happen.
You're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, you have to make it happen because if you want to be successful in anything, it doesn't matter whether it's real estate or cars or anything. And just life in general, you got to go and get it. You can't just sit back and just wait for shit to happen, because if you do, shit's going to happen.
Just not
and
your
it's going to
way.
happen to you, but not for you.
Bad shit.
Yeah, bad shit.
So would you say you're a visualizer when it comes
No,
to
I'm not a visualizer. I don't visualize shit. What I do is I grip it and rip it.
All right.
And I don't fucking settle for fucking excuses. And that's the thing is so many people, as soon as they fail one time or they hear the word no, they're like, oh, I told you it wouldn't work. No. I'm the type of guys that well, let me just say this. When I first got into real estate, luckily, the brokerage that I work for has a great team leader, and he's very inspiring and has a lot of knowledge. But one of the things that was very, it was disheartening to me to start out with, but then, I spoke with him and he kind of filled me in on this a little bit. But one of the things that he said is you got to learn to love the word no. You have to learn the word no. You got to love it, right? Because for every no that you get, you're just one more no closer to the next yes.
And that is something that you taught me about life that you're applying to the professional world that I used to apply to the dating world. 50 no's and yes is still a yes
Somewhere.
somewhere. So it's a numbers game. It doesn't matter how many times you get told no. If you keep working at it, you're going to get that yes.
I know when I switched careers, because I've never been in IT before, never been in IT. I was very fortunate. I was blessed to this day that I got a job in the IT field. But I did not rest on my laurels. I said, you know what? I shouldn't be here, but I'm here. I better make the most of it because, gosh darn it, I could leave as quickly as I came into it. And so I took that opportunity to say, you know what, Jason, it's not enough for you to be okay with it. It's not enough for you to be average at it. You better be as good as you can be. And I agree with what you're saying, Dave, is that just because I got my foot in the door, that's not enough. That is not enough. You got to do more to get that reputation of being a go-getter, doing the things that people aren't willing to do. And you know people, I know people that are smart, intelligent, capable people will not do the extra step, the extra length to do what needs to be done to be successful.
And I want to add on to that. And I want to go back to an old Will Ferrell movie, Talladega Nights, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Wait. We were doing really good. And now you're referencing Talladega Nights. Wow.
I have to, because when he had to get back in, he had to drive with the fear of the cougar. You remember that movie?
I do.
You had to drive with the fear of the cougar.
I do.
Exactly.
I do.
But when you got that job in IT, you had to use that job like you had the fear of the cougar. That cougar was going to jump out from the backseat and get you.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example, and I've been told this many times. 4 people all started at the same time, myself and 3 other people.
You're the last one standing.
And I said, you know what? I'm a success story. And he said, you know what? We have a 75% failure rate because 3 of the 4 people are no longer in IT. They're no longer what we're doing.
So hold on. Let me ask you a question then, Jason. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because, and I could be wrong. I think it's because that at some point I made a differential to say I need to be in IT and not rest on my laurels.
Okay,
the other 3 people either did not want to grow, did not want to be better, and so they left.
But my point to that being is you got in there and you had that fear of failure. You call it what you will, but you're not going to be a percentage. You're not going to be one of those statistics. You are gonna work your ass off to prove that you belong.
I will tell you this:
anyone that's got a half a brain in their head that wants to work and do it right, that's what they're gonna do.
So I took about a 65% pay cut when I left the mortgage industry to work at the hospital. I worked in the patient financial services department. When I applied for the job after a year, making $12 an hour, not very much. When I applied for the job in IT, the salary was going to be almost double what I was making before. That recognition from them told me it's not enough just to get your foot in the door.
No, you got to work.
I had to earn the respect of the people that had taken a chance on me. I had to earn the respect of people. And I firmly believe the people that can make a difference in this world, Dave, there are a lot of realtors out there before you. You have done something to say, you know what? I'm going to be just as good, if not better, because I'm going to hone my craft. I'm going to take it seriously. I'm not going to just wait for the person to come to me and say, I want to sell my house. That's the difference.
Is that not the difference between being a leader and being a boss? Being a leader is someone that's gone through and done the work and not afraid to do the work again to show someone how to do it. Being a boss is telling someone what to do and expecting them to do it right the first time. Dave is a leader. You're a leader. You guys will go out there and show the person what you've done and how you've done it and then let them grow. Dave, you're going to be a team leader at some point when you start your own team. I don't know if you will in the next couple of years. You're doing your solo thing right now, but when you eventually start that, you're going to crush it because you're going to take the knowledge you've learned and you're going to apply that to teach everybody else that works under you to bring them to where you're at because
Dave,
you know success.
So let me ask you this, Dave. You've been in the real estate business long enough now. What do you think makes the difference between successful people in real estate that you know and the people that just you'll sell 1 or 2 deals a year, 3 deals, maybe 5 deals a year, but you're never going to be serious about it. What have you seen now that you're in and behind the curtain that you say the things that I notice about those people they're not doing or they are doing is what makes them successful or not successful?
Work.
But what does that mean? Because I see a lot of realtors taking people out to show them houses, and I see a lot of people
Those are probably the ones. That's probably the top 20%. And honestly, because so the business is there. And a lot of
people would say not.
Well,
Over the last 6 years, a lot of people said, real estate in Kingman is dead.
So yeah, okay. So yeah, you're right. You're right. A lot
I mean,
of people, a lot
I
of
mean,
people. No, you're.
I'm not trying to bullshit,
No,
but
no,
the
you're
reality is a lot of
absolutely
people
correct.
have said no.
A lot.
We at the height of the boom, there was 580 realtors licensed in Kingman.
Uh-huh.
When I left the business in 2010, there was 168. So you could tell there's a lot of people that were riding the momentum of the boom, and then when it came down to reality, it came to a halt.
So let me ask you this, Jason.
So that's 70% of the realtors right there. So I guess what I'm asking is, you're a successful realtor. I'm considering you a
What are your
successful.
keys to success, Dave?
Yeah.
Like,
or
what-
what are
what have
people
you done to be
doing that
successful?
are not, that are making them not successful or successful?
So, okay, and I have to credit this to a lot of people. Actually, they have been very instrumental in teaching me because, obviously I don't just know how to do it. I mean, I had basic sales skills, but it's not a matter of that. I mean, if you can sell, you can sell. But with that being said, what are my secrets to success? I guess that's what Scott just asked. Is you just got to work hard. You have to commit. You have to commit to your business. You have to commit to your clients. You got to know the ins and outs. You're running your own business. And it's hard. It's really hard to pinpoint it. You got to be positive because you might you got to stay positive because you might put 4 deals in escrow in 2 days, but in 3 days you might have 3 of them fall out. And you just have to continue to work. Though that's the thing is you can't let up. You got to just continue to work.
So let me ask you this, Jason. What have you done? What are your keys to success?
I think one of them is that I took it as a personal a pledge that now that I'm in IT, I need to become IT. I didn't rest that, I have the job, so I'm safe now. I took pride in learning IT skills and learning what it was to be a successful IT person, knowing that some of the things I was going to be learning, I'm not an expert in.
And you see, and I'll take that one step further with what I do. Is I'm the first one in the office every day. I take pride in the fact that I'm the first one there, not just to go in early, but I want to be the first one in there to see what's going on, to check what happened the night before, and to get on top of things before they start. But at the same point, I'm also always looking over my shoulder. And for me, it goes back to the fear of the cougar. There's always someone younger, smarter, and faster than you on your tail. So you have to make sure you keep your game up. You have to make sure you know what you're doing, and you're at the edge of everything.
Anybody's replaceable.
Exactly.
Yeah, and maybe the one thing that I've gleaned just from this conversation as we're running, we're kind of getting to the end of the conversation is, you have to have faith and confidence in yourself.
Well, yeah. If
You have to look at it and say, you know what, I'm the best determinant of whether or not I'm going to be successful.
Well, I'll put it to you this way: if you don't believe in yourself, why would you expect anyone else to believe in you?
So many people, though, Scott.
so
So many
going-
people do. They say, "Oh, I'm gonna become a realtor because they make a lot of money."
Fuck it, man.
And they don't work hard, do they?
I'll think-
Dave, you've probably seen over the last 3.5 years. Oh, I'm gonna be a realtor. It's gonna be a great gig. If you're not willing to work, you're not willing to make it.
But on top of that, sometimes you have to fake that confidence until you make it. You have to be willing to put the work in to figure out and have that level of humbleness to say, all right, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to figure out what this is and not be afraid to ask questions. And that's what you've done, Dave.
Yeah.
You've asked a lot of questions. You've made a lot of mistakes, but you've learned from those mistakes, and that's put you in the position you're in today.
Well, actually, I guess you could say that or I could say the real key to my success. And to be honest with you, I'm in my opinion, I don't feel that I'm successful yet. I definitely want to be way more successful than I am now.
Sure.
And that's a drive to success right there. It's never settling.
But
Right.
But the fact of the matter is if you want to be successful in any career, in any business, or in anything, you have to surround yourself with people that have already been there and done that. You have to surround yourself with if you want to be a millionaire, do what millionaires do. If you want to be a successful real estate agent, do what successful real estate agents do. The problem with it is once you find out, a lot of times once people find out what those people have to do, that's when it becomes hard. And that's
Yeah.
when it becomes, the market's bad.
Wait,
or
you mean you have to work?
yeah, exactly.
Oh.
So, but what I mean is it's a lot of times it's way beyond just doing the work.
Well,
it's-
and what I think what people don't realize is that what you make look easy is because you practice it, and you
That's
talk it in your
absolutely
mind,
right.
and you do the things.
Well,
I
that's-
used to remember them saying, "Oh, Michael Jordan makes it look so easy," but they didn't see him practicing 12 hours a day. They didn't see him on the court when no one else was there,
Well, and that's-
taking
and that-
jump shot after jump shot after jump shot
Exactly,
to make it look so easy for us. It's easy for us because we say,
Sure.
"Oh man, well look at that player do that." You doing what you do. They don't realize. I've heard you saying I'm on 5 hours a day calling cold calls, where I just call people and say, "Hey, you want to sell a house? No? Okay, click. You want to sell a house? No? Click. You
here's-
want to sell a house?
Here's
I mean,
kind of a funny story about this, actually. That talking about cold calls. One of the very first listings that I had, the brokerage that I work for, Keller Williams. They have a training called the Bold program every year, and this is something that still gets brought up in our team meetings and stuff a lot of times because I'm the only person that's ever done it. But well, that they know of at least. I'm sure other people have done it, but I was like almost brand new at doing this, and most of the agents that were doing this training already had like large databases of clients that they've been working for years, Well, I had nobody. The only people that I had as a database basically and were just my people in my cell phone and the people that I knew. So I obviously needed to have more people to call than that. I needed to have more people to talk to in order to be able to get started quickly. So one of the things in this Bold program was that we had to make, not necessarily call, but we had to make a certain amount of contacts every day, which means basically just we needed to talk to a certain amount of people every single day about real estate, whether they wanted to buy, sell, referrals, whatever it may be. I didn't have that. I didn't have those people. So I picked up a phone book and I literally started calling the phone book. And the first thing that I did is I just closed my eyes and I just kind of fanned to wherever it stopped, and I just opened it and I put my finger down, and it was at the beginning of the T section. And
It's better than Q.
you're right. So the very second phone call that I made, the first person didn't answer. The second person answered. I got a $186,000 listing off of that phone call.
you committed.
So yeah, absolutely.
You committed
I had no
with a
clue what
leap
I was
of
doing.
faith.
I had no clue what I was doing. I just ran with it and said, hey, I ran what I would consider a script with them, and it worked. I got the appointment and ended up selling the house for him.
So if we can sum up this conversation,
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that if you're going to go through a career transition, early in life, middle of life, even the end of your working life, if you're going to change career tracks, don't be afraid to ask questions. I would say find a mentor in that field too, because there are people out there who are very successful that you can mirror yourself off of, and they're willing to give you the information if you just ask.
Yeah, you got to ask. You got to have
Because
those
if
conversations.
you don't ask, you're not going to get those answers that you need or want. And fuck it, man.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't
work
reinvent the
work
wheel.
smarter, not harder.
Well, and I will say that if you're going to change careers, commit to that change.
Oh, absolutely.
Commit to it to where you say, you know what? I am now a real estate agent. So any preconceptions about who I was before, I am now this. This is what I am.
Being in sales, that's something that you have to do. You have to become what it is that you are. If you're a car salesman, you're a car salesman all the time. If you're a real estate agent, you're a real estate agent all the time.
And-
you always have to be thinking about that next deal
And-
and who that deal might be.
And on that note, as we close this show, because I know we're running out of time, I will commit, because Dave said it earlier in the show, someday I'm going to work for Dave. And as a way of showing my commitment to Dave, I don't order Starbucks online, but when I do, Dave, your coffee order will be number one on my on my Starbucks app list for
Yes,
ordering
sir.
every day.
Yes, sir.
I will say this, and it's only on a personal level. When I think about Liquid Carnage and I think about what we talk about, sometimes we talk about just jackass shit.
Nonsense.
Every once in a while, we do talk about a topic that whether you're in that position right now or you're thinking about moving on to a different position, I love the fact that we open ourselves up so that we let people in. We're not proud people. We're not guarded people. We let people in and we
I
say,
think we're all proud. I think it's just a matter of that we want to share our successes and our failures and that so that others can follow in our footsteps and learn from our mistakes.
I think doing this podcast has taught me one thing. It's that there is room for growth in everything we do. And there is so much knowledge in this world that we don't know that others do. And it is dumb for us and irresponsible for us not to ask the questions or have the people on here to talk just to see what we might learn, what our listeners might learn, or just what can be put out in the world that someone can learn from. And that's huge.
Do me a favor. If you've had a job change and you're proud of that job change, go onto Twitter, tweet us at Liquid Carnage, hashtag job change, hashtag new life. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what stories you have out there.
Hit us up on Facebook too. We also have at Liquid Carnage on Facebook. We're on Instagram, but that's more or less for jokes and other things. But on Facebook and Twitter, by all means, at Liquid Carnage, find us, leave us a note, tell us about your life changes, tell us about your career changes. We want to hear about it because we want Dave back on the show with some input from you, so we could talk about these things and really have another deep discussion over it.
On behalf of myself, Scott, Dave, thank you.
Yeah,
We
thank you
asked
so
you here
much.
because you do have an insight, you do have an input on this topic and other topics. Don't get me wrong.
In fairness,
but your
though-
personal history of where you started to where you are now is a testimony of hard work, belief in myself, and trust that what I have to give has something value in the world.
In fairness to this, in fairness, you talked about the bold sales system that you guys learned at Keller Williams. We did the same thing here tonight. You were actually my second phone call, in full disclosure, about guests coming onto the show.
Wow,
I,
he
I-
was.
I scrolled through my phone as we were sitting here because we wanted to get one more show in. The first person didn't pick up.
Justin
ironically.
Timberlake did not pick up first. No,
JT
did not pick up.
You know why? He was on the phone with me when he called.
Oh,
Oh,
that's true,
it's like
true,
a little
true,
fox.
true.
Dave got the listing.
True.
But I said, you know what? I scrolled to the W's and I saw Dave motherfucking Watson. And sure as shit, man, you picked up. And here we are now, man. We just had a great discussion on career changes and just how to get your life together if you want to be good in sales, man. So we appreciate you coming on.
Just anything. I mean,
Anything. It's a
yeah,
commitment to anything.
Yeah, it's a commitment
because
to
all of us
excellence.
have become successful in the new career that we have.
Don't be scared.
And that's the thing is
Don't
if
be
you're going to
scared,
give it
period.
110%. Don't give it half-assed and think I'm lucky enough
Yeah,
to
use
get
your
it.
full ass.
Realize that I'm blessed to get this and I'm going to make the most of it. Dave, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Jason, good show.
Yeah.
Once again, find us on Twitter, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Liquid Carnage. Thank you for listening to us on Podbean. If you found us on iTunes by now, it means we're out there, we're successful. You guys are listening. We always appreciate fan input. Thank you guys, and always remember.
If you never know what to say, always have a liquid carnage.